Good evening and welcome back for Chapter 5 of the story of Helel. If this is the first video you're seeing of this read-through series, you can go back on my channel and watch the other 5, because there are the 4 chapters and then the prologue at the beginning. Or you can go ahead and check out my website where you can download the book for free under Bedtime Stories and read along, read ahead, just go ahead and read it. It's a free book. I mean, if this is the type of story you like why not, you know? Anyways, without further ado, I'm just gonna get started. Chapter 5, Torn Apart. The Guardians were hot on their conquests, laying waste to city after city and wiping out every single entity of corruption who had been tainted, stained, and closed their hearts to the ways of the heavenly arrow. Alvin walked alongside the Guardians, providing excellent information on the whereabouts of certain civilizations and the sort of deeds they committed. Gebben, city of unbelievers. They strip and shackle any who have even an interest in the Waymaker and stone them in the town square. They burn the Lord's prophets as witches and desecrate any who mentions his name. They sacrifice to other gods and worship material items. Yes, the Everlasting burns with fury against them. I can feel his sorrow well within me. Angelique wiped a tear from her silver eye. Why must they do this? I can't understand them, and I never wish to. They will find that their reasons were useless when face to face with the Lord. Their filth will remain behind, but they will meet him in due time, and they will realize that they cannot escape punishment, even after death, Valgus said firmly, creasing his forehead. Yes, I will lead and raise the waters from their wells to destroy any idol they worship and erode away any altar that dirty blood has been shed upon. Nero grunted. Shadows crossed his face, giving him a stern appearance much unlike his usual demeanor. I will wait with Alvin once more, Helel declared. 'Twas his usual post when they exacted judgment. Without fail, he'd been the rear guard in every single siege. That was the nature of his power. He was the janitor, the one to clean things up. It didn't upset him or anything. In fact, he was thankful that he didn't have to take part in flattening out civilizations with thousands of homes. Those sorts of roles more suited the other Guardians who have hardened themselves to such missions. It was imperative that every city and town of those who shuck away the Lord's law be sent into oblivion, so that a new age of peace can take place with the Heavenly's faithful followers. One day, this will all come to an end. We must trust in the Promise Keeper that he may bring about the peace he vows. Helel said. Yes, but in order for that to happen, we must keep our own oaths and commitments to him, Alvin responded, holding a fair point. Yes, you're quite wise for a young man. Well, only with good reason. I've been through many terrible things, all of which the arrow guided me through. It was like being in a tunnel with him as a light on the other end. Genesis interjected. I'm glad he has brought us together, Alvin. Your future is bright, but so is your responsibility. We are pleased you chose to come with us. I was instructed directly by the Lord of what I am to do. He promised me land flowing with milk and honey and descendants more numerous than the stars in the sky. I'm not the only king who will live, but I will be sure to fulfill my role to the utmost diligence, for I follow the eternity of goodwill. He will be mocked no longer by those who rebel against him. All is well, then, Scoogie nodded. He glanced upwards at the dome of blue above, only interrupted by several long pink clouds, and a sunset. Now is the time to act. Then, let us go, Nero stood, brushing back his blond hair and rolling up his brown sleeves. The Guardians disappeared into their own elements, leaving Helel and Alvin alone. Their power is beyond great, Alvin observed. Helel nodded. That is so. But it does not come without a price, a simple reminder that the powers we have are not ours, nor do they come from us. Every act is supposed to reflect the Lord's will, and any step that is taken out of line will affect us as deeply as our souls. I have experienced this personally, though I am ashamed to admit to my roaming fantasies. As long as you are aware of your own actions, then all is well, Alvin replied, patting Helel's shoulder. The boy boy's hand was small compared to his own. To think that humans came in such wide ranges of age, size, and color. He hadn't experienced what was here called youth, the prime time of learning and making mistakes. The Guardians were placed into this world fully formed, powerful enough to change even the Earth's rotation. But they did not abuse this power because their master placed enough common sense within them to realize that such an act without instruction would count as treason against the heavenly. He absent-mindedly gazed at the falls of water spilling over the tops of the city's high walls. From above, stars were sent showering the ground, landing holes in countless buildings and breaching the walls. That power came from no guardian, but directly from the Lord himself. The waters receded as the towers came toppling to the ground. One might think that the guardians were attacking peaceful cities who had done no wrong. In fact, there were several rumors floating about of such instances. However, 'twas not the case whatsoever. Each civilization that crashed and burned at their hands was one of war, bloodshed, sacrifices, and layers upon layers of sins. The king of Gebin alone has used his army to annihilate children of the Lord, leaving carnage in its wake. The guardians themselves have passed through countless towns, left with piles of bodies and cowering survivors. The chaos having been a result of the siege laid upon them by Gebin and other cities. No. None of this judgment was without reason or purpose. The fact is justified by the very presence of the Lord, who is merciful and forgiving, but not one to allow evil to run rampant through the lands he created. The greatest power to exist is choice. We all live by it, as the Lord wants us to live and learn and grow to appreciate his influence. However, choice can also kick you like a stubborn mule and send you spiraling into a darkness you were never aware existed. Even blacker than the darkest night, it will consume you until you feel as though you are no more. 'Tis the nature of evil. The ruler governs us by choice. He has every means to smite this world, with how many rats have infested and populated it, but instead chooses to allow countless opportunities to find him. I know how furious he is with the brandishing of spears and the clashing of swords because I feel it within myself, burning with passion. But I feel his sorrow as well. It brings me to tears when I think of how lost these children have become. But without his favor, you are without a name in the book of life. 'Tis but the truth of it all. That was his inner monologue, so just so you know. It's your turn, Alvin announced, bringing Helel out of his thoughts. Yes, he stood and stepped forward through the gap between realms. From where he stood, several leagues away from the fallen walls, he could see the tens of thousands of souls frantically floating above the fallen Gebin. He brandished his scythe and started his conquest of darkened souls. Their blackened selves smoked and burned as he got closer, making it feel as though his skin was bubbling with burn boils. Their faces were something of absolute horror, like they were extracted from the worst of worst nightmares. Their screaming mouths were simply black holes stabbed into their heads, and their faces shifted, until they had no definite form. Helel mercilessly stabbed them each with his blade and thrust them into a cage of electricity. This was a routine he was now accustomed to, but the screams and whispers never failed to intrude his mind and make him question his actions and purpose. I am of the Lord. I am his servant. You cannot touch me, he declared, gulping at a knot of iron which had formed within his throat. I need to get out of here, he whispered to himself, searching his mind for how to leave. It presented itself to him after several minutes of panic, and the gap opened. Before he could step out, his arm flung itself back, as though someone had grabbed his wrist. The gap wavered, threatening to lock him within his realm forever. No, let me go, he demanded, struggling against the invisible force. You cannot have me, he cried desperately, throwing himself towards a shrinking portal, but remaining locked in place. The screams grew louder until he could no longer hear his own voice. Then, a whisper that reminded him of a snake flicking its tongue between its fangs breached his thoughts. You want me. You crave me, don't you? The taste of power is sweet, isn't it? I can give it to you. Come to me, and I will give you the power to be greater than even the heavenly. Blasphemy! Impudence! How dare you try and coax a guardian into following your ways? I am more than a soft-minded human who turns to you whenever it lusts after something. Be gone from me. Helel boiled with anger. How brazen and arrogant of evil to wish for him. You will beg to me before long. You cannot resist me. The clinging sensation of the voice slowly left him, like water trickling down his back. The grasp on his wrist was released, and Helel collapsed through the closing gap. His toe exited the portal just as it completely disappeared. Alvin leaned over him, concern etched into each crease in his forehead. The other guardians were just returning as well, claiming victory over the walled city of Gebben. Thank you, Helel. This would never cease if you were not here, Genesis smiled, referring to the task of imprisoning evil within his space. Yeah, no problem, he replied, feeling uncomfortable in his own skin. He rolled around as a chill clung to his sweat, and he felt like tearing out his own throat. Hives began to overtake his limbs, and his mind was whirling around like a tornado. Helel turned to the side and hurled whatever might have been in his stomach. Are you okay? Nero stood over him, frowning with worry. Valgus knelt beside him and grabbed his wrist, which Helel instinctively snatched away from him. Scooby joined them, reaching for Helel's forehead, but the Space Guardian hid his face in his hands, trembling. Helel, what's the matter? Genesis asked, dropping to her knees and placing her palm upon his ear. He shook his head. This feeling was unbearable. It was like every force of nature was pummeling against his mind, tearing through it, throwing insults and whispering his hidden desires. My wall's been broken, just like Gebben's, he sobbed. No, Helel, don't say that, please, Angelique cried, pulling him into an embrace and rocking the hysteric guardian as though he were a newborn baby. Have you been troubled as of late? Skooky asked, keeping his hand tight on the guardian's ankle. Greatly. Then we must punish the demons who dare to try and manipulate a guardian of the elements, Vlam rumbled, revealing his forgotten presence. But I've locked them all away. This one is not like them. It's different. More powerful and cynical than any I've smote with my scythe. And it has a grasp on me. I don't know what to do. He exasperated, desperate for an answer. Helel, have you closed the door to your heart again? Skooky asked gently, tilting his head so his black tresses fell out of his face. I don't know, he said, finally realizing his mistake. Once again, he'd shut out the voice of the Father, severing himself from any solution. Yes, I have, he admitted disdainfully, upset with himself for doing something so regretful. Then open it again and call for help. We are not the ones to turn to. As much as we can try and help you, only he can save you. You know this well and true, my friend, Skooky advised, relief playing on his words. However, Helel wasn't out of the hot seat yet. This was just one among many headaches he had gotten, and one among countless he will have. The feeling ripped at his innards as though he were a deer being gutted by its hunter. It was unpleasant and itchy. I will do so, he promised, unsure of himself and those around him. Please, for our sake and for the sake of the Lord, be sure to, Genesis stressed. He looked into her eyes, a beautiful, mysterious green that reflected in every angle of the sun. They were clouded with concern and shone with love for a friend. Everyone's eyes showed sincerity. But were they real? Of course they are, he told himself. It was greatly uncharacteristic of him to have such doubts. Why was he harboring them now? After many months together with these fellows, they'd shed blood together, both their own and others, and grown so close that they knew each other's habits. Was he trying to sever those bonds? Why? He released a long, heavy string of air, letting all of his pent-up emotions flow out. What needed to be done here has been done. The city of Gebin has been torn down, but the territory of the Jebusites has yet to be completely cleansed. Their mission is far from over. And that concludes Chapter 5. Sorry for a few mistakes. I've re-recorded this so many times that I'm just not gonna do it again. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed that. It seems like Helel's getting to a very confusing point in his path. So, stay tuned and see what he does to get through it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned for the next chapter. That should be out hopefully next week. I haven't been able to record these as often, but I'm aiming for 2 days a week. So 2 chapters a week. We're already at chapter 5. There are only 10 chapters in this book, so we're basically halfway through. Really excited to get to the rest of that, because I really can't remember exactly what all happened. It's been a while since I wrote it. But yeah, thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a good night. I probably should stop recording these so late, but it's whenever the house is the quietest. So good night. Oh, that's not